Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Listen and grow as Del questions the status quo, encourages you to think differently, and empowers you to make a better life. Get ready as Del challenges core beliefs, seeks the truth, and reveals the roadmap to the lifestyle you really want. And now your host, multi-millionaire, national award-winning investor, CEO and founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley.
Welcome to Del Walmsley Radio Show, where the hype ends and the help begins. I'm your host, Del Walmsley, and as always, we're working on your financial freedom. Today, my friends, on Tell Del Tuesday, we have a guest that I actually am excited to have on because he fits some people that, as far as an example, somebody you can look to and say, hey, I can do that too. Some people that didn't start out at the top of the game as far as money when they get started. His basic situation was he started about $21,000 in debt. And now, 10 years later, he's about net worth over $1 million, million plus dollars in net worth. So it's a really great story. Can't wait to get into it, and really want to welcome Lance Farrell out of Louisville, Kentucky. Lance, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, that's quite a story, man. I just think that we've got to hear about it. Let's talk about where you were at before you decided to do this and what made you decide you wanted to do something different.
Yeah, so 2009, I was, like you said, $21,000 in debt, recently divorced, struggling. And one thing I didn't mention before, but I actually slept in my car for a couple of nights until a friend let me crash on the couch. And that's just kind of where I was. And then 2010, I filed for bankruptcy just to try to get back to zero. And then I actually heard your program on the radio, and I knew I wanted to do real estate. Of course, being bankrupt, you can't do anything for 4 years. But 4 years exactly to the day after filing bankruptcy, we started looking for our first rental property in October of 2014. Purchased our first property and took off from there.
So let's go through this. First of all, you made a statement in your bio that I thought was interesting. A claim to fame, so to speak. You said, I am a blue-collar worker and do not have a college education. Well, I can claim pretty much the same thing. So it's an interesting point that you bring up that you've started from a different position. And I never missed having a college education. Obviously, you at this point don't miss it, but it was really a good point. I also, now that you said that, I want to bring up this. You went through a divorce, and boy, we all know how painful that is. I've gone through two of them. You ended up broke. That's problematic. You went through bankruptcy. That's problematic. But then you say 4 years later, we started to buy. Does that mean during that downtime you found another lady in your life? And
Yeah, turns out it was my old high school sweetheart. We connected through social media. Didn't really plan on, reconnecting that way, just talking, and then one thing leads to another. But at the time, we were recently married, and she was real hesitant, of course, but her best friend that she grew up with, turns out he was also in real estate, which is what I think pushed her over the edge. But yeah, neither one of us were, professionals and making, hundreds of thousands a year. We were both blue collar, squeaking out $70,000 a year. So yeah.
So what does she do for a living?
Well, she doesn't do anything anymore. She's since retired, but at the time she was working actually for a payday loan company, in Rowlett, Texas there.
Okay. So I'm going to take a stab at something here that, and the reason I'm doing this is not in any way, shape, or form to expose your life, Lance. I really want to expose a situation for people because people out there are listening with a really perked ear right now going, yeah, really? You went through all that and now you're worth over $1 million in just 10 years, and we got to be really careful to make sure we give them all the information. So let's go backwards to the bankruptcy and the broke, $21,000 in debt after the divorce. How did you get the $21,000 in debt and broke? Did the divorce in some way do it, or were you broke before you got divorced and that led to the divorce? Were there spending problems? Were there gambling problems? How did you get there?
Oh, it was definitely spending problems. That my ex-wife, unfortunately, just didn't understand credit cards. I mean, in her mind, if I can afford the minimum balance, what's the big deal? And that gets away from you really fast. Credit card debt is probably the worst debt that anybody could be in. And that's where the debt was. It was all credit cards. She had cards in her name. I had cards in mine. And because of the divorce, I took on all of the debt. I transferred every bit of it to myself so my son could continue to live where they lived and go to school
I got
where,
you.
All his friends were. And I don't mind talking about it, because it's reality. Credit card debt is a killer, and that's where my debt came from, was credit card. And fortunately, because it was credit card, I was able to file Chapter 13, which, is about the only way you can get out from underneath that without really killing yourself.
Does that clear it?
It did. It was, it cleared it completely. I got completely back to zero. And was able to start saving slowly from that. Because like I said, I'm a blue collar worker, still am. I think at the time I was making maybe $40,000 a year. And so I was able to start saving money at that time. And I had the 4 years to save. And between that and the 401k is how I actually purchased. I took a loan from my 401k, and that's how I actually purchased the first property.
It's probably challenging when you're in a new marriage and you've come out of a financially difficult backstory, that she's wondering, are we going to go slide down that hill again and go back into another bad situation? Is this scary? We're going to wipe out our savings. What's he getting me into? I could see all that going on. How without sharing more than she would want you to, give us as much as you can about where her position was on this.
She was, definitely a Dave Ramsey, person. Let's pay off everything. Let's get debt free, and then work really hard and save. She had by herself saved, a considerable. I say considerable. She had an IRA that had a little bit of money in it, and clinging to that. Of course, dealing with the market as it happens, but. That was her plan, was let's just pay off everything, let's get out of debt, and we'll go from there. She didn't understand the concept of going into debt, to buy rental real estate. So that was the big hurdle for her, was let's not, taking out loans to go buy rental property.
Gotcha. So she's a firm, solid Dave Ramsey approach type person. Did she go to the 2-day with you?
She did. We both went, sat through, both days, and then I actually have a family member that has been in real estate for years, and we went and visited him, and then he actually regurgitated every single thing that we heard in the 2-day, because he'd been, doing it for over 40 years, and it's the same concept with him. I mean, real estate is real estate. It's if you know what you're doing, it's not hard. And so that kind of brought her around a little bit more, but then ultimately it was her friend that she reconnected with growing up. They were retired, and she says, jokingly, what are y'all, Lifestyles members or something? And, of course, her answer was, well, as a matter of fact, we are. That was what did it for her. That's what 100% sold her on it.
That's unbelievable story, man. If I could can that would be great. That'd be put some secret sauce there. That's a great story. So she was still fighting and kicking until she ran into somebody that retired. Huh? That's hilarious. So Did you buy anything before she ran into that friend, or did you just wait until she came along and, was on board?
No, she came along, fortunately for me, before my 4 years of jail time, as I call it, was up. So by then she was fully in, and the second I could buy, we were ready.
Gotcha. All right, good. Now that your net worth's over $1 million, is she a believer yet?
Oh, yeah, she has been for a couple of years now since she's been able to quit working.
You laugh at that, Lance, but the truth is, most things we do in life, especially if you're type B like I am, which is an analysis paralysis guy, is that you do it, you sticking your toe in that water going, man, I'm doing this, but I still don't believe it. I'm going to go do it and prove it, right? That's until that first one or second one hits, then you go, oh, now I actually believe it. Then all of a sudden they become very cocky about it. Yeah, I've analyzed this to death and I've figured out this is the only thing that works and blah, 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 blah. But man, that first toe, getting it in that water, it's hard to do. So let's talk about the first deal. Just how did you psychologically get into the first deal, and how did it work, and what did you do to get the money? And, that's the tale of the first deal is always the scariest. And you did how many, 7 houses and a 6-plex?
Yeah, we had as many as 7 houses and 6-plex. We shifted some things around. We actually just sold one. But the first deal, scary, as you could imagine. We were, like I said, I took a loan on my 401k. I borrowed $14,000. I had a small savings. The first deal was $17,000 out of pocket for purchase and rehab. We went to go look at the property. We walked in. There was music blaring, garbage all in the living room, and it was a bit unnerving. But the music was, to keep people from breaking into the house, I suppose, because it was empty. But it was 1970s, all original, and car parts everywhere in the living room. So the first deal was pretty scary.
Well, so was there somebody living there?
No, it was a gentleman that had been recently married, and he had moved in with his new wife and was selling his home. But, he was a typical, bachelor. His hobby was cars, so there was car parts literally everywhere.
I've seen it. I actually saw a guy had a metal shop in the living room one time, believe it or not. So this property was in Fort Worth, Texas. How did that happen? Where did you live when you purchased this property, by the way?
At that time, I was living in Garland, Texas, and I got the property in Fort Worth from a property blast that the real estate agents put out, and went and looked at it and, decided to go ahead and go for it. But, yeah, we lived in Garland at the time, and I lived in Texas up till 2019. I got laid off from a government contractor job at the end of 2018. I have a son that lives up here in Louisville, so, the job opportunity came up here, and that's how we wound up here.
So I assume Garland's a suburb of Dallas or a suburb of Fort Worth?
It's a suburb of Dallas.
Okay, gotcha. So you put $17,000 down. What did it do for you? Was there cash flow to it? Was there any captured equity on it? How did the deal end up closing, and what were the results?
There was equity capture. Definitely, there was cash flow. That one started out cash flowing $300 a month, and the equity capture we paid $78,000 for that house. And as soon as we were finished rehabbing it, it appraised for $105. And then we sold that property. And actually, we learned early on that you could refinance non-owner operated, occupant houses, rental property. You could refinance them and pull cash out of them.
We're going to have to take a break before we go into that story. We'll be right back with Lance Farrell and the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
coaching you with a roadmap to creating the lifestyle you really want. Keep listening. The Del Walmsley Radio Show returns in moments.
Right now, we're coming upon a great opportunity. It's that time in which you're going to find that the marketplace is changing, and it is shifting to a buyer's market away from a seller's market. Number one, the brokers don't want you to know that. They're going to do everything they can do to keep you from believing the truth. Number two, the sellers don't want to believe it, although in the back of their minds they know it. Now, that doesn't mean everybody will crater for you, but some people are going to be in those situations where they have to negotiate for deals, and you've got to be there. Now, if you're not there, you won't get one.
Join us for the free online workshop, and we'll show you how to be in the right place at the right time in any market cycle. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com. lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com. That's lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
You're hearing the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Want more life-changing knowledge? Access our podcast and listen on demand at lifestylesunlimited.com under the radio tab. Now your host, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. With me here today on Tell Del Tuesday is Lance Farrell out of Louisville, Kentucky. And as we went to break, Lance was talking about his first single-family property purchase. And Lance, the excitement to this for me is to be able to show people how you worked through basically the same way I did, figuring out where to get some money. I mean, you scrape it around and move it around and, you know, a little shell game, and you pull some more out and get another deal and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go back to this first deal here. You paid $17,000 down for this house. And you made some captured equity, and you didn't say how much that was. You said how much the house was worth, and you said how much you paid for it. But what did you actually capture after you did your rehab and everything compared to what it was worth? Did you make $10,000, $20,000? What did you make?
I was trying to remember that. I believe it was right at $30,000. I was trying to go back and remember because it's been a few years.
The point I want to make is, and being off a few percent doesn't matter anything for the story, but the point is you made about a 200% return. Now, nobody's making that doing anything else. It's just not happening. I mean, and that was an instant equity capture of about a 200% return on your money. Then you said it made about $300 a month positive cash flow. So I'm going to get out my trusty phone calculator, which you're not supposed to use on the radio. 300 times 12 is 3,600 divided by 17,000. That's giving me a 21% cash on cash return. You're not getting that anywhere else. This is a pretty good deal. Did this one convince the wife that, hey, we're on to something here?
It did, absolutely. And I got ahead of myself a little, like you said, scraping together, trying to figure out where to get more money. So with that purchase and the power of it, she actually realized, hey, we have equity in her home, which she owned by herself. Let's refinance that property and pull some money out and go buy another one. And so that's how we wound up with our second property.
So there we go. We've got a property that's got debt equity. And I'm just putting narration to your story, Lance. It's got a property that's got debt equity that your wife, you know, before she met you or before you guys got involved, would have thought, you're not touching that equity. I'll cut your arm off if you try to refinance that thing, right? I got to pay that house off. That's what Dave Ramsey says. I got to pay that thing off. And yet you were able to, through the results of this first one, show her, wow, we made 200% return. We got a 21% cash on cash return. And all of a sudden she goes, you know what? I got this other house sitting over here, Lance. Maybe we should take the money out of it and go buy me one of those red houses or go buy another one. And so that's a great part of the story, Lance, just to see her coming around and being willing to take the equity out of her house. The next house you purchased did what?
So that was a house in Mesquite, Texas, Choctaw Lane. So we pulled $20,000 out of her house. And then, you know, had a little bit of savings again and bought Choctaw, which was I think we paid $24,000 out of pocket for that property to purchase and rehab.
It says 20 here.
Yeah, 20,000. Yeah, you're right. 20,169 is what it was. Which we had to put a little bit more with it because there was some incidentals and things that were unseen that came up. But yeah, all total, just over 21,000.
And did you get any captured equity in this particular deal?
Yes, we captured on this property. I believe it was, again, right at $30,000 because we purchased it for $98,000 and it was priced for a little over $140,000.
Excellent. So you made 150% return captured equity on this one. And what kind of cash flow did you have on this one?
This property cash flowed. This one was really good because the rent kept going up while we were having it rehab. This one cash flowed right at $400 a month.
All right, so we got $700 a month. Now I'm going to play with some numbers real quick here for guys outside. Not you. I know you know your story, but let's take $700 a month times 12, and that's $8,400 a year. Now, your taxes, your income tax, Social Security, and Medicare tax, you don't pay on these particular deals. So that $8,400 a year is worth at least 30% more. So times 1.3, that's worth $11,000 a year. And you were saying at some point in your story there you were making $40,000 a year. You've just replaced a quarter of your income in the first two deals you've done. Did that become obvious to you that you were on your way to replacing your income?
Oh, absolutely, yes, it did.
All right, so then the wife got so motivated she decided to use her own home as a rent house. Now that's a hard one, Lance, because there's that it's my home. And I don't want anybody to mess it up or get it dirty. I know how hard that one is, right? It's got that family DNA in it. We can't let somebody else live there. How did you talk her into that one, or is she now throwing the ball and you're hitting it?
She's pretty much throwing the ball and I'm hitting it. She was 100% in, at that time. So the objective was obviously to turn that to a rental. That way she could free up that debt and start buying property, herself, which the next several properties, that we bought, she bought on her own. So, yeah, that was the purpose of that. Plus the cash flow. I mean, that house was cash flowed magnificently.
So what did it cash flow a month?
It was cash flowing $500 a month.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
So I'm playing this game here with you just because I want people to see this, because this is how it comes to you. It doesn't come to you all at once. So now we have $1,200 a month income times 12 is $14,400 a year, right? Times 1.3 because you're not paying taxes on it. That's about $19,000 a year. You're now up to almost half of what your income was when you started this whole process. So that's incredible. Turn that one into a. So we got three now. What was your next process to get money on? How did you go scrape some more money together for your next deal?
Well, at that time, through Lifestyles, we discovered that you can refinance rental properties and pull money out of them. So we had quite a bit of equity in the Mosa and Choctaw, our first two properties. So we refinanced them because we wanted to buy more property and pulled, I think it was a total of $40,000 between those two properties we pulled out in cash. And then we talked to a mentor at Lifestyles that said, hey, why don't you go buy properties in Houston, because at that time the hurricane had just come through and flooded, almost all of Houston. And she said, why don't you go buy down there, because you can, really get a return on your investment. So we bought our next two, which were Hickory Grove and trying to remember the name of that road.
Scottsdale Street?
It was Scone Street and Hickory Grove. They were out in Bear Creek.
Uh-huh. So the question was, were these flood properties or not?
Yes, they were both flood properties. They were both first-time flood properties, so they were gutted. The people had taken their insurance and sold what was left, and so we got those properties very cheap. I mean, it's really, really cheap.
Now, how did you end up buying something in southern Indiana?
It's right across the river from Louisville, and it's a really hot area. In fact, last year the rents increased 13%. for that area. So that's why we made the decision to look over there.
Okay. So tell us about this purchase. What did you like about this particular property that you went into?
I loved the fact that it was being ran by a gentleman that really doesn't understand what he had. He hadn't raised the rents in years. They were about $400 under market. He was asking $385,000 for it, which would allowed us to purchase it and still have some cash left over to do some capital improvements. And then subsequently, we've raised the rents. The property now has a net operating income of $52,000 a year.
So I don't know what cap rate's going for out there, but let's just talk about you paid $380,000 for it. What do you think it's worth now if you use a market cap rate on it?
Market cap rate is around 6% for that area. And so it's currently, let's see, I have it valued, I believe it's $850,000 is where I have it.
800. And what did you pay for it? 300 and what?
385,000 actually.
Oh my gosh! I love what I do for a living, man. That's all I can say. So this is obviously a success. You called it the natural progression of a real estate investor, is what we called it, lifestyles, and you pointed that out. I guess my next question is this. Two questions. One is, when did the wife decide that she didn't have to work anymore? And secondly, where are you guys going from here?
She decided about 2 years ago, right when we bought Tabor Court, the apartment, that she didn't need to work anymore. And so that worked out well. And then she became a real estate professional. And then so now we've actually sold her single-family house that she owned. And we just sold it and put $137,000 in the bank, and then we're going to start looking for the next apartment.
That's amazing. It's too much fun to hear these stories. So just at the peak there, what was your cash flow, just out of curiosity, with all this stuff added together before you started selling it off?
At the peak, it was I'm trying to remember because my brain doesn't work that well anymore.
I'm just trying to figure out how your wife replaced your income. It was right at
$2,800 a month was what the peak was.
Okay. So let's see what the wife was able to pull out and live off of. Let's see here. If you've got $2,800 a month times 12, I'm coming up with $33,006 times 1.3, and we're looking at $43,600 a year. And there you go. You're out. Lance, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And congratulations. I look forward to hearing your next story about the next one. The rest of you out there, remember this? It's not the money, it's the lifestyle. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.
The information and opinions you hear on the Del Walmsley radio show are those of the host, Del Walmsley, his guests, and his callers. The Del Walmsley show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Del Walmsley show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.